and I say, you know what, when I die, I want all my assets held in trust for my kids, and Martine, I want you to be the trustee to take care of the money for my kids. Sign it, notarize it, everything's cool, everything's clicking along. 6 months later, I'm talking to Jennifer, and Jennifer's telling me, hey, you know, Martine's doing really well out of Verona every night. Oh. So since my trust is revocable, I can do an amendment that takes Martine out and puts my friend Joe in. Unless there's a really good reason you want your trust to remain revocable. Irrevocable means exactly what it says. You cannot change it. Irrevocable trusts are for complex, large estates, and it generally involves tax planning to avoid paying the government a lot of money in taxes. Okay? If people try to sell you on irrevocable trusts, they're probably using fear, saying, oh, somebody can sue you and take your assets. And then every time somebody brings that to me, I say, okay, all right, well, what are you going to get sued over? Are you in the tobacco business? Are you running liquor in between interstate? Are you out shooting people on your front lawn? Okay, do you regularly drive drunk with a gun in your hand? What are you going to get sued for? That's usually the thing. People say, well, I have a rental property. Okay, so did you put your rental property in a limited liability company or in a corporation? Or did you get a big umbrella liability policy from your property casualty person? There's nothing for you to really worry about. All these irrevocable trust guys are trying to do is get your money and create a whole set of problems with you that you're not going to want. I've been practicing estate planning for 21 years. I was a CPA before that. I understand all these schemes. They call them advanced estate planning techniques. I call them revenue generation machines for the attorneys and the accountants, because that's always what happened. When I started out, I worked for a litigation attorney, and all he did was sue lawyers who pulled these games. And what happened was the lawyer would set this thing up, and then 2 years later, the IRS would put in a regulation shutting down what they did. And guess what happens when the IRS shuts you down? Penalties, interest, and taxes. And very unhappy people, okay? So when you do your planning, you want to keep it revocable while you're alive. The only time you want it irrevocable is when you die, because that's my stuff. When I'm gone, this is what goes down. And if you don't like it, that's too bad. That's the way it is. Okay, so that's the big picture, okay? Now, if people are telling you trust it for creditor protection, I already told you they're not. They're for estate planning. If you have issues with creditors, that's what LLCs, corporations, and liability policies are for. Now, how does the trust work? Well, what we're going to do is create a living entity separate and apart from you that has the ability to carry out your wishes whether you're alive or dead. If you think about what the problem is, the solution is very simple. The problem is that I'm the only one who can sign on my stuff. So when I die, everything I own is going to probate court. Okay? Well, if I don't own anything when I die, then there's nothing to go to the probate court, right? But if I don't own it, who does? My trust. See, we're all persons. We're natural persons. But there are other entities that are persons. Pacific Mechanical is a corporation. It's a person you work for. You get a paycheck from it every couple of weeks, right? Okay? Limited liability company is a person, and a trust is a person. So what you're going to do is you're going to set up this trust, this person, and it's going to own your stuff. Now, you're in complete control of it, but you're not it and it's not you. You're two separate entities. So the idea is when you die, it's still around doing what you told it to do. That's the big picture, okay? Now, how does this all work legally? Well, it all works because we're able to separate your ownership interests. And as you sit here today, you have two kinds of ownership over your stuff. You got the beneficial ownership, and you got the legal ownership. There are so many attorneys who don't even understand this, so hopefully you guys will get this and you'll know something lawyers don't. There you go, okay? Beneficial ownership means for whose benefit is my house owned? Mine. I eat there, I sleep there, I drink there, I party there, I watch football games, I raise my kids. That's about it, okay? I'm not touching the beneficial ownership of your house. It's yours before you do the trust, and it's yours after you do the trust. What I'm going to screw around with is the legal ownership of your house. The legal ownership means the form of title that you choose to use to show the rest of the world that that's your house. Well, what are your choices? Well, if you're married, I bet your house is either husband and wife as joint tenants or husband and wife as community property, right? Or it could just as easily be Jennifer, married woman, has her sole and separate property. Steve, an unmarried man. Martine's Corporation. Rick's LLC. And then we're going to add one more onto it, you know, Smith Family Trust. Okay? That's the big idea. Okay, now, how does this work? Well, what I'm going to do is separate, I got to stay here for the camera. What I'm going to do is separate what you do now into 3 separate job titles. So with regard to your house, you actually wear 3 hats. You are the owner of your house, the person who's on record title, right? And you are the manager of your house, the person who signs on the dotted line, whether it's a kitchen construction contract or a line of credit or whatever. And you own and manage your house for the benefit of, excuse me, you. Okay? Well, guess what? In the trust, there are 3 job titles as well. The owners of the trust are called the settlors. You'll also hear the term grantor or trustor. I like settler because it's easy to remember because you're settling up your family affairs. The only one that can change the trust are the settlors. So by definition, when the settlors are dead, there's nobody around that can change the trust, then the trust becomes irrevocable. Make sense so far? Okay? And while you are alive, you are also the trustee or trustees of your trust. Trustee is a fancy name for manager. Whoever is trustee holds the pen and has signature authority to sign on behalf of the trust. Why were we in probate court? Because there was no one who had signature authority to sign for you, right? Okay? So, while you're alive, you're trustees of your trust. And you own and manage your trust for the benefit of you. So, we sign this trust, we notarize it, it's now a valid legal entity. And then what do? We fund it. I'm going to talk about trust funding in about 5 minutes, but bear with me. I want you to go to the last page of your handouts, and you're going to see it's called the grantee. When you bought your house, so-and-so granted the house to you. Husband and wife as joint tenants, husband and wife as community property, so-and-so as an unmarried person, whatever. Well, we're going to do another grantee. And what does it say? It says, John and Susie, husband and wife as joint tenants, hereby grants ownership of the house to John and Susie, trustees of the public family trust, dated blah, 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 blah. They sign this deed, we notarize it, we ship it off to the county recorder. Legally, when everything's all said and done, who owns the house? Trust. Okay, but who owns the trust? John and Susie. So as far as the outside world is concerned, has anything really changed? No. Before they were owning it as joint tenants, now they own it in their trust. And if one of them dies, it's exactly the same as if a joint tenant died. Because if a joint tenant died, what do you got? The surviving spouse. Owner, managed beneficiary, same thing. Surviving settlor, surviving trustee, surviving beneficiary. Why? Because the problem's not when the first spouse dies, is it? It's when the second spouse dies. So now, in effect, when the one spouse dies, it's now exactly the same as if we have an unmarried person who set up a trust, because you have a one-person trust, settlor, trustee, beneficiary. Okay? So we create the trust, we put everything into the trust, and then the trust says who gets it, and they got to go to college, and they got to do a drug test, and blah, 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 blah. But the key difference in the trust is you name a successor trustee. So, for example, my wife and mine says we're co-trustees. If something happens to one of us, the survivor is the sole remaining trustee. If both of them are gone, then my sister Marlene becomes the new trustee. Okay? So when both of us die, what happened? Marlene becomes the new trustee. She's the successor trustee. Okay? That's the big difference. So what happens? What did I do? I just handed the chosen pen to my sister Marlene, my chosen fiduciary. Successor trustee has what? Legal signature authority to do exactly what I told her to. Why were we in probate court? Because there was no one around with signature authority. We just created a trust where the successor trustee has signature authority to act. Therefore, you don't need a court order. There's no filing. There's no public disclosure. Your privacy remains intact. Administration's quicker and easier, and it's tens of thousands of dollars cheaper. Okay? So what did we do? We said while we're alive, we're settlers, trustees, beneficiaries. When we're both gone, no more settlers. Trust becomes irrevocable. We say who the new trustee is, which is my sister, and who the new beneficiaries are, my kids. Make sense? Okay? So, we put everything in the trust, then we die, everything goes to the kids except for what? We've been talking about the state of California for the last 20 minutes. Who'd we forget? Your friends and mine at the federal, at the IRS. So they say, When you die, we want death tax. They call it the federal estate and gift tax system. It's death tax. Okay? It's a wealth accumulation tax, and it's based upon your net worth. And people don't realize this, but net worth includes proceeds of life insurance. People say, no, Steve, you're wrong. Life insurance is tax-free, isn't it? Yeah. Income tax-free. Not death tax-free. So they say, oh, that's great that you planned for your family. And when 10 years ago, when the limit was $600,000 per person, it was a big problem. But now the limit's $5 million per person, so go get all the insurance you want and come and see me too. Okay? Now, the estate tax system includes any and all assets. The estate tax code is incredibly complicated. So if you think you're going to give away stuff 6 months before you die, they look back at all transfers within 36 months. It's just, the estate tax code is like this thick. And the income tax code is like this thick. Why? Because there's a lot more money involved. Okay, you got rich people with lots of lawyers, and they fight. And they lobby, and they get all the laws passed they want. Okay? So it used to be, you had to have what's called an AB trust. And I'm just going to go through this kind of quick so you can get an idea how sneaky people were 35, 40 years ago. Okay? Let's say you guys are married, and your net worth is $10 million. That means under community property law, $5 million is husbands, $5 million is wives, right? Okay. Well, if I got $10 billion, my wife and I have $10 million, and I die, I leave everything to her. She's got $10 million, and the exemption's $5 million. So that means $5 million goes straight to the kids, and what happens to the other $5 million? It gets taxed at, now the rate's 40%. Okay? So what you used to do back in the day was you'd set up an AB trust. So what happens is everything's in one big trust, then when the husband dies, his money goes here, and the wife's money goes here. And then when they both die, when the wife dies, everything goes to the kids. So basically what happened was the husband left his money to the kids, but it's in trust until the wife dies. So the wife has use of this money. There's restrictions on it and stuff, but the idea is husband left $5 million to the kids, wife left $5 million to the kids get $10 million, IRS gets nothing. You don't really have to do this anymore because they have this thing called portability, which the rules are giving me a headache on right now, and stay tuned. It's like, yeah, and people say, well, what do you mean by that? Oh, just wait till Obamacare kicks in and you'll understand. Okay? Now, trust funding. A trust is only as good as what you've put in it. If you fail to fund your trust, it's useless. This is where all the mistakes are getting made now. Okay? I have people coming to my office with these beautiful leather-bound notebooks and parchment paper, and God, it looks beautiful. I'm like, how much did you pay for that? Oh, $2,500. Oh, that's nice. Can I see the deed to your house? To your parents' house? The what? The deed. See, if your assets are not in the trust, where are they going? Okay. I get more probates now for people that didn't fund their trust than I do for people that didn't do documents in the first place. Why? Because nobody ever teaches anybody what to do. Okay? A lot of lawyers' mentality is keep people in the dark, you make more money. Okay? I know that sounds kind of mean, but that's the way a lot of people operate. I have an empowerment mentality, which is the more people I educate, the more people refer. That's my thinking on it. Okay? So what happens is, you have all these different kinds of assets, and you got to figure out how to get them in the trust. And it gets confusing. So when people get confused, what do they usually do? Nothing. So what I did was I boiled it down to one question. Okay? And that question is, whatever asset you're looking at, the question is, does it have a beneficiary?